So yeah, next patch is 1.30.1. And it happened just 1 month after 1.30. August. And then September. And then 2 months later, there was 1.30.2. Okay, so this is where when they were patching a lot. That's when they were pretending to care about WarCraft III. Hoping to make some money with Reforged. So actually, well, this doesn't really... Yeah, that's not really a real patch. Farsight was intended to be level 3. Mid-Vagan's Disease Cloud now deals 2 damage per second. That's it. Okay, that's not exactly a real patch. November, though. So they rebuffed Brilliant's Aura to try and help the humans. I think that we were... I mean, we check. Yeah, that's 2018. There was not that many tournaments, but yeah, we were lagging behind for sure and struggling a little bit in this. Keep in mind that Happy was barely active too. That we had no idea what we were in for. They buffed Flame Strike a little bit. They buffed Devotion a little bit to help out with the Paladin. And then they nerfed the Keeper a bunch because, I mean, Keeper was really stupid. Trend damage reduced. And then they nerfed Root. I mean, the Keeper patch was one of the worst things as well. Buffed the Warden a bit. Buffed the Pit Lords. They reduced the hit points of Totem. Really did feel sometimes like it was one of the really hard buildings to kill, even when it was building. They increased the regen of Priests, because, like, you know, with the new Brilliance, it feels like we never had mana anyway. And they put Control Magic on tier 2, which really only concerns, like, Wolves against Orc mostly. And then, yeah, they buffed a bunch. Control Magic. Cannon Tower, they buffed a bunch, but you never see them. They're just trashed for the most part. Reduce the damage of Hunts. I think they were trying to help maybe Orcs against Elf here. And then Talon, they reduced the gold a little bit again, so they went back. I mean, they increased it pretty massively before. And then they reduced the Acolyte movement speed. I think they realized that it was too big a jump that they made before. So they lowered it again. So yeah, kind of small minimalist patch here. This one. And then 2019. Early 2019. They reduced root range from 800 to 600. It was absurd, because the thing about the Keeper is that it's faster than almost any unit. So even if you're out of range of Entangle, he will catch up to you and then he will entangle you with that much range. Nothing should have 100 range. 800 range. That's way too much. That's range of Nova, I think, which is also absurd that Nova has this much range. So they reduced it to 600. That's the range of Bolt, I think. They nerfed the Alchemist a bunch. And then they changed defense. I should actually increase from 50 to 65%. But I think he was bugged before, basically. There's been a drop-off in the use of the change. They changed the intent to restore usage. So, you know, relied on RNG rather than a flat damage modifier. We anticipate there may need to be adjustment to the percentage. We'll be keeping an active eye on how the new defense performs. Yeah, I don't even know if that... Is that like a proper buff? I don't think so, right? It was... I thought it was more of a nerf, personally. The adjustment. And then they re-nerfed the Giants. So they brought it back from 6 to back to 7. It's so weird, like this. It's just like, oh yeah, no, we tried that didn't work. Cargo size increased from 2 to 4, so that's like 4 Zeppelin and stuff. So this was some very minimal patches to try and help a little bit without breaking the game and doing like a ton of changes. And then early 2019, we're gonna check the results for 2019 after, by the way, with these changes in mind. That was the big one, yeah, that was the big patch. Windwalk, so they had a cooldown after you exit Windwalk, so now you can actually be targeted instead of like Windwalk hits, pick up an item, steal XP, Windwalk again. They reduce the cooldown of Windwalk from 5 seconds to 2 seconds. So when you exit Windwalk, you're targetable for a little bit, but to be honest, not that much. Devour can target Mountain Giant without resistance gain. So yeah, I mean, you don't really see Kodos trying to counter MGs ever. Usually if MGs are made, it will be because they have the upgrades eventually. But yeah, that was interesting. Pulverize, Tauren now start with the reduced Pulverize that deals 20 damage. And yeah, you still have to research it if you want to do more damage with it. Spike Barricades. They reduce the number of upgrade levels from 3 to 2. And then Knights, they added an upgrade Sundering Blades to help human against Undead, because that was starting to be a really rough time against Undead. So you need to research that at the barracks. It required Castle, Lumber Mill, and Blacksmith, so you can only research it when you're at Tier 3. So when you got Tier 3, you needed to make Knights, get Animal War training, and get Sundering Blades. And it was 100 with 40 seconds research time. Animal War got changed a little bit. 50 more hit points for the base. And Griffin as well. And Dragonhawk. But then... So basically you had more hit points before you research Animal War, but then once you research Animal War, you would have the same as you would have before. And they reduce the lumber a little bit, because they know we lose peasants and we never have lumber. They nerfed control magic a little bit. So it would take more mana to take stuff with them. And then Orb of Fire got nerfed. Damage reduced from 10 to 7. No idea why. No longer gives area of effect damage. Instead, they made it like something that you would use against undeads. Decrease the effectiveness of healing abilities and hit point regeneration by 35% for 3 seconds. So basically, if you target a fiend with this and then the Death Knight cores, then 35% of it will be reduced. Ultra Vision is now applied to Mountain Spirit. Oh, it was not before? Mana burn cost reduced from 60 to 50 across all levels. So they went back as well on this one. Thought that 60 was too much. The elves were all complaining. Druid of the Claw, minimum damage in bear form increased from 22 to 23. Lado can take credit for this one single-handedly. Was whining for a month about the fucking damage of bears. Well done, Lado. You brought your raise back on top, didn't you? Glaive Throwers getting changed. Who cares? We never see them. Hippo Rider. Keeper of the Grove. Night Vision Radius. Base Intelligence reduced a little bit. I mean, Keeper was really, really good. Invulnerability duration reduced from 3 seconds to 1. Trance base damage reduced from 15 to 14. Gargoyle got a movement speed increase. They became cheaper. And then they changed the order of Necromancers. They completely reworked them. Triple 85 mana. They just really wanted people to play Necromancers, apparently. They added a Ritual Dagger. So before that, it was really hard to play anything else but DK. But once Ritual Dagger was added, then you could really go for anything much more easily. Like Dreadlord, Lich, Crypt Lords. Anything you wanted. That's something that made Undead expanding with any hero, other hero than Death Knight, possible. There was a couple change on like some of the neutral heroes. Breath of Fire. And then they added two sets of boots at the shop, so that if one player buys one, then the other one is not, stranded without boots. They both can buy it. We have never really seen anyone buy both boots and then sell one so that he can still chase the opponent's hero. It hasn't really become a thing. I guess it's very expensive. Crystal Ball dropped as far as item. Yeah, there was a lot of work that needed to be done with items. And then the aura that you find of Devotion, 1 armor instead of 2. They reduced the price of Periapt. Ring of Protections got changed. They gave more armor. Nobody gives a fuck. They're a terrible item. Get them the fuck out of this game. Vampiric Aura effect increases from 15 to 20% with the Scourge Bone. Sentry Words used to reveal for 5 minutes, now 3 minutes. That's a good change. Tome of Experience, no longer a random drop. Thank God. Warsong Battle Drums, not probably the same War Drums Commander buff as Kodo Beast. They did a whole bunch of change with the maps as well. Yeah, that was almost mid-2019. So now we can take a look at 2019. What exactly happened that year? It looks like Night Elf did the best, followed by Undead, then Human, and then Orc last. It's not super far apart from the races, as we can see. Only 15k between Human and Orc, and the 20k between Undead and Orc, and Night Elf to Orc is like less than 30k, so not the biggest of difference. Happy did really well 2019, then followed by Lin, followed by Moon, and then Infi was still doing really well, then TH shortly after, Lowlight 120. So you're seeing all the races represented in Focus. Top 8 has 2 of each race. That's kind of sick. 2020. Actually, we can take a look at the tournaments as well. 2020, that's where Infi won WGL twice. That made a lot of noise. Because now we've already had a lot of changes to Human and like the balance overall, right? I feel like Undead has gotten so much better. In my opinion, Human has gotten so much worse. But Infi had 2 incredible runs in WGL. And then people were screaming, Human Imba, Human Imba. So, gonna have a look. That's the summer one. Where Infi beat Focus, then Fly. I remember he played a double Sanctum style with Archmage MK. Then he beat Foggy, then he beat Lowlight, and then he won a Human Mirror in the finals. So that's why people were complaining a lot that Humans OP, because 2 Humans made it to the finals. But to make it to the finals, neither of them met an Undead, and also back then, 120 wasn't really putting it together as well as he is now. So I think the most difficult matchup, in my opinion, back then was Undead by far. Against Orc and Elf, it was actually playable. And then that's all they met. And also, both of them won with a 3-2 in the semifinals. Which is wild. Like, they easily could have lost. We could have had a Night Elf Mirror in the finals. Very easily here. The games were, like, super close. So yeah, Human Mirror in the first one. And the second one, Infi, where is he? He went against Colorful, then he went against Moon. So he's still doing really good against Elf at this stage. Then he won Lowlight barely. Then he played random and he beat Fly. So clearly, like, he's just above everybody else at this point. And he played 4 races, by the way. And the only one he lost was the Orc Mirror. He beat him with Elf, then he beat him with Undead. And then in finals, he 3-0'd Moon. And again, a lot of cries from players like Human Imba winning the biggest tournaments with the most money. But the thing is, like, if you look at this, it doesn't even look like Human did that good. And that's where, like, you know, perception and what people are saying and how much people are whining can affect you in, like, and push you away from facts. The fact here is that Night Elf did the best that year. But if you were listening to anybody at around this time, it was all about Human being broken and Imba and stuff. I think most people, they didn't pay so much attention to the balance changes as much as they did, as much as they should have, or as much as they did the results, like in actual tournaments, because Elf outperformed Human here. And then Undead is not that far behind, and then you have Orc. Yeah, Moon and Lowlight did really good that year. That was a big year again, by the way. 2020, almost 800k. So let's move on to... Actually, let me see the patches first. Yeah, so we just did 2020. These are the patches that then came out on Reforged in 2020. Yeah, so there was a big nerf on Clap. like with all the changes before, and now they also added 1 more second to the cooldown. I think most people agreed at the time that both Clap and Stomp were like too good, so they added this 1 second on both of them. And then they made Rifle shoot a little slower. They buffed a bunch of ultimates, or like reduced the mana cost, I guess. Yeah, Stomp also. Stomp cooldown was increased. And yeah, they had nerfed the Keeper quite a bit before because of the Keeper patch, but then they re-increased on level 3. Entangle, also level 5 Keeper, the Entangle from 600 to 800. So the Keeper can, again, entangle from like across the screen, basically. And then they removed the Invulnerable Tranquility, thank gods. They reduced the time, but they increased the healings way to match the previous numbers. Yeah, they added 1 damage to the bears. They reduced again the talent. The fucking talents got increased so much, then reduced twice. Impel can no longer... Okay, so that's the Criplord patch here. Impel can no longer be interrupted. Units knocked airborne can now take damage and be attacked. Criplord cast point increase from 4.4 to 0.5. Current Beetle's mana cost increased from 30 to 45. Now spawns 2 Beetle at a time, up from 1. So 2 Beetles for the price of 1. Maximum Beetles increased from 5 to 6. Cooldown increased from 6 to 9 seconds. Yeah, I'm glad that they can make fucking jokes of it, you fucking balance. They reduced animate dead costs. They slightly nerfed Skeleton Warriors, not much, just 10 hit points. Change Ritual Dagger a bit. They buffed the Bear of Beastmaster. I'll exchange the mana a little bit. And then they changed the items massively. Yeah, so Potion of Greater Mana from 300 to 250. I think it was a joke, like 300 was way too much. And if you compare it with Mana Stealing, Mana Stealing, you will steal 100, but you will gain 100. So it's a 200 difference. This was a 300 difference, which is just nuts. And then they changed Mana Potion to give a little bit less mana, but also cost less. Yeah, they changed a whole bunch of like bullshit items that we're not really concerned about because it's not so much about solo. And that's... Yeah, that was in June of 2020. Then in October of 2020, there was this one. So Human was struggling a little bit. Against Undead in particular, I think. They lowered the golds for Castle. They increased the peasant hit points by 10. Yeah, zero armor unit. That's the slowest unit in the game. That's just sitting there waiting to die. That's got nothing to hide inside. Their hit points go from 220 to 230. Yeah, I'm sure that's going to help them a lot. Yeah, right. And then they nerfed Clap. Clap has to be one of the most nerfed things of all time. It's actually so sick. Like the amount of nerfs that this thing got in a row. And Bolt as well. Just absolutely wild. It used to do 175, then they nerfed it to 160 on level 3, and now it does 150. So it's like... And then the cooldown went plus 1 second as well. They reduced the AoE, so from 400 to 350, so it's even smaller. Like, Clap was just nerfed so many times, and it was one of the staples of Human. One of the things that like you always could rely on and needed that brought success to Humans history-wise. They reduce again the attack of rifles. And then Spellbreaker armor reduced from 3 to 2. The goal here is to try to get away from mass Spellbreakers in Human Mirror. We have never seen as many Breaker Wars as we do currently, so that has changed absolutely nothing. But in what matchups do you make Breakers? I don't remember. Oh, right, you make them against Night Elf, against Orc, and against Undead. So a unit that's used in every single matchup, you've made worse in all the other matchups, but in Human Mirror, you're still seeing it. So it changes absolutely nothing. Well fucking done, boys. Sorceress, slow movement speed reduced from 60% to 55%. A slight movement speed reduction to Slow, this is to improve the orc versus human matchup and to slightly improve the human versus night elf matchup to compensate for the lack of this spell. What the fuck are you talking about? They got wisps, dryads, and then orcs have speed scroll. Like, they're literally the ones that, I mean, they got endurance aura. Literally, like, slow makes them move close to normally compared to anything. So yeah, one of our key things that was good historically, also slow, got nerfed here. And siege engine, so it wasn't enough. You know, I find this change to be one of the funniest, because after tanks went from 3 to 4 supply, you were already never seeing them anymore. And then they slapped us with 85 experience instead of 60. So basically, they're like giant XP tomes now. Regen changes to undead repair rate could potentially increase the viability of siege engines, so we're increasing the experience bounty, which we feel is too low. Yeah, right. What a joke. So yeah, this was... If you look at the buff, like, you know, a little bit of gold, 10 hit points, the buffs are very minimal, but then you're nerfing one of our most important spell, one of our most important units, one of our most important spell again, and then something that was already rendered unviable now is made even more unviable. This play a big deal in like how the current Warcraft balance plays out. For Great Hall, they got like one more supply. That's because they can make one more PN to scout in Orc versus Night Elf, as written here. They buffed Mirror Image a little bit. And they reduced the Stomp duration. It was way too long. 3 seconds when you can catch multiple heroes in it is just a total joke. So, sorry, 4 seconds. So they made it 3 seconds, which is still very strong, I think. 2.53 is still very strong, but 2, 3, 4 was just absurd. I remember these 4 seconds, like, I would get both my heroes stunned, and then because the cooldown, like now I guess it was 7, but it used to be 6 before that. So you had 2 seconds to get the fuck out of the way, because otherwise everything will get stomped again. So it was just silly. So they increased the repair rate of Nerubian towers. Unholy Aura got slightly nerfed with the movement speed, but I mean 10, 20, 30 to 10, 17, 25. Doesn't seem like that much when it means that you move quicker than your opponent. The Crypt Lords got increased hit points on the Beetles, but a movement speed reduction. They removed the burrow ability of the Beetles, which like that was one of the most stupid things in the entire game. The fact that Beetles, like Crypt Lord would get level 3, and then they would send Beetles to like harass you, some of the undeads, and then they would just burrow every time you were about to kill them. And then there was nothing you could do. There was just their burrows. You couldn't afford to buy dust and use it at this time. It was silly. Change the destroy a bit. Then Gargoyle now have an ability to target air units more. They changed Necromancy, but then they ended up reverting it, so we don't need to focus on that too much. Wisp mana drain on Detonate reduced from 50 to 40. That was to help against Orc. Yeah, because Orcs were struggling because they were getting all their mana drained by fucking Wisps. They relowered the Archer hit points because people were massing Archers left and right, and like you just couldn't do shit against it. Rid of the Claw Bear form, and then they increased the damage. How many fucking times did they buff the damage? Or am I reading the same change over and over? So it used to be 22, then they made it 23, then... Wait, no, it used to be 22, then maybe 23, then 24, then 25. The fucking Bears. They lost a bunch of damage, but then they kept on regaining it. The Bears are like amazing. They're one of the best units, I think. Super underrated. Especially because of their spells, like not just as fighting units. Chimera friendly fire removed. They reduced the range of Rain of Fire. That was, I think, the Pit Lord third push against human was just insane. Nothing should have 800 range, I think, in this game. It's just silly. They changed a bunch of the items. Claws became +5 instead of +6. They changed the Tome of Retraining from 300 to 200. One of the Wind went from 3 to 2 charges. And yeah, that was 1.32.9, which was October 21st, 2020. Which was the year we talked about, right? with the 2 WGLs that Infi won, and people were screaming, Human Imba! Shortly after that, Infi and TH started doing, like, having really bad results, and they stopped pretty much playing in tournaments. Like, if you look at 2020, you have Infi winning 2 tournaments. He kind of bombed out of the rest. TH took second here, but then the next year, you only have Infi here at the start of the year, which this is not even like a proper tournament. This is like a single show match where he had to play 1-2-0, and he played random and he smacked him. And then this is the type of match that people will look at and be like, oh, yeah, no, Human won again. No, it's not Human that won. It's fucking... He played random, fam. He only played Human on Terranas. So yeah, 2021. Guess we can go now. Last year. Just last year, guys. Last year was Happy's year. He just absolutely demolished everything. He played in all NetEase tournaments. And he brought Undead to second place, by the way. Before that, Night Elf was doing really well the entire year. But Happy at the end just turned it on. He won DreamHack. And that was a really big year for Warcraft. 800k. But there's been bigger years in the past. But yeah, 800k for like a very small niche game with a niche community is kind of nuts. But yeah, Night Elf did the best. Followed by Undead, followed by Orc, and Humans trailing behind. And in my opinion, this was very clear that Human was going to start doing worse from this point. Because of like how many of the matchups are. So yeah, Happy on top, followed by Moon, followed by 1-2-0. And there's a thing we kept hearing, by the way, which was, it's not really in balance, it's just Happy. Nobody else can do it. But then 1-2-0 started really putting things together and smashing people, and then it became Happy and 1-2-0. The Elves, they've always had a lot of players that did well, and yeah, they're up there as well, then followed by the Orcs, and then Humans struggled pretty damn hard already that year. Yeah, that's 2021. If we look at Tier 1, I mean, this is not really a Tier 1 tournament. It was a one-on-one fucking match. But if we look at Tier 1, Happy 1-2-0, Happy won, then Colorful won WGL, Fly won next spring, and then Lin won the Regional Championship Asia, Happy Europe, and then Cruncher in the 2-player tournament beat Hitman here in the finals. That's the Tier 1 tournaments. Let's see Tier 2. Tier 2 tournaments 2021. So now, look with me at how many humans have won these tournaments. I see a lot of like skull heads here. Chemico won this one, the TED Cup, but everything else is Undead or Elf pretty much, with a little bit of Orc. And then some humans got second, but like success-wise, that was a really, really bad year, I thought, last year for Human already. Look at how many Undead wins. It's insane. And like this is... Like, you know, I don't want to take away from the players and say like, oh, this is only because their race was like really buffed, but it plays a role. This is what you need to understand. If Undead was a bad race, there is no way they would get this many players winning tournaments. Just like, if Human was a bad race, there is no way like they would win. I mean, to be honest, I don't see that many humans. What was a good year for Human? Yeah, like in 2014, if Human was a bad race, obviously the year wouldn't look like this. Obviously, Human was really, really good here, right? There is no denying that. Maybe you could sit there and like there's a couple people are going to be like, well, it was just Infi and TH, they were the best, and they just so happened to play Human. No, well, maybe, yeah. But Human was the best performing race here. You just have to accept this. And was in many years of WarCraft 3. But now in 2021, it seems like Undead and Night Elf were the ones doing really, really good. Especially Undead, fucking hell. They won so many tournaments. So yeah, that's 2021. Now, that was the last year. By the way, 2020 and 2021, there were the 2 years where there was DreamHack. So we made 800k in prize. There was total. And yeah, that's 2 years in a row where Humans struggled. Like, but in 2020, Orc was the least winning race. Actually, well, didn't struggle, and so to speak, in 2020. That was the 2 WGL year. If you remove these 2 WGL, yeah, it was a bit more of a struggle. But yeah, Elf was the top. And then 2021, Elf atop again with Happy starting to crush, 1-2-0 starting to crush, Orcs lagging a little behind, and Humans lagging way behind. Now let's get into the current year, guys. We're in September. So the year is not finished yet. This current year, this is not going to be the biggest year for Warcraft, but it's not going to be the smallest either. We're almost at 300k in prize pool. We are at Undead 77,000, Night Elf 37,000, Orc 34, and Human 16,000. The top 2 players in earnings is Happy and 1-2-0, so 2 Undeads. Then you have Colorful, Lin, 15th Sway, Focus, Fly, Lowlight, Moon. And then only in 10th place you have your first Human cockling in, and then Sok and Shemiko behind. So way more of a struggle. There is really like no other way to say it here. And we can look at the tier 1 tournaments. There's only be Rejuvenation Cup and Super WGL, which were won by 1-2-0 and Happy. Tier 2 is... Look at all these fucking skulls everywhere. It's like, let's play Spot the Human here. There's barely any. TP Cup, a 2nd place for Chemico. That's like a smaller tournament. Very often you look these as well, and it's like, they won't have met any Undeads. Yeah, so you see like, this is an 8 players tournament where he beat 2 Night Elves. And then lost to the 3rd one. And he took a 2nd place. Against Night Elf, I don't think it's the most problematic matchup. It's hard, but I think it's Undead and Orc right now that are really messing with us. Then there was Sok took a 2nd place in Dobby Cup. He won against Kaho. Then he won again. He beats 2 elves, and then he meets an Undead in finals. Then he loses. I don't think Elf is Human's biggest problem. I think it's Orc and Undead that I find just absurdly difficult. Sok won a tournament, but granted, it was a 6 players tournament. Where he beat an Elf, then he beat an Orc. So still no Undead in this. And then he took 2nd in the WarCraft survival battle. He beat Soin, then he lost to Lin. If we look at some recent tournaments, so there was TED Cup that just happened. And TP Cup keeps happening as well. And WSB. So you see like Chemico and Sok, Hawk, they're in these tournaments. Lowlight, by the way, tried to play Human against Soin. That was a Swift 0-2. Yeah, Fortitude also lost. So yeah, Sok. Sometimes he'll beat some, like, for example, 1-2-0, but this time he actually lost and was eliminated. Chemico beat an Elf, then he lost to Focus. Then he lost to 15th Sway. And a lot of tournaments look like this. This is the 2nd group stage. No Human left. Playoff, no Human left. Go to TP League. The Humans, actually, 2 of them qualified for the quarterfinals. They both got 3-0'd by Elves. Warcraft Survival Battle. Moon finished first in the group. Focus, Sok, Soin, Chemico. Then Chemico beat Soin. Sok beat Chemico, but then lost to Focus. And then finals, Orc Elf. Again, another tournament where there is no Undead, by the way. And the tournaments that we have coming up. Now, shall we? TED Cup 10. I don't know if this is filled out. We got the Meisterschaft. And we got the Arcadia World Series. That's a big one. TED Cup 10. Oh, we already looked. I don't know why it was in ongoing. The current Meisterschaft. X-Law is going to win, like for the 10th time or whatever. He's basically never going to lose a Meisterschaft ever. But some of the other Undead struggled a bit more. There is a chance I might not even take 2nd here, I think. It really depends on like the last matches, but like today I lost to I lost to Scars, which I think is silly. Like, if you look at our results, if you look at all our matchups, like Mirror against Elf, all that, I would say I'm almost certainly a better player, but Human is just fucked against Orc, so I just struggle against him. Against Orc and Undead is just stupidly hard matchups. So it's a fucking struggle. So I ended up losing, which kind of screws me for the race for the playoff. I'm not sure. But yeah, like we don't have many humans. We're struggling a little bit, even though Leon like practices a ton and did okay so far. But yeah, this is going to be won by an Undead. Who's going to get the most money, as always. Arcadia World Series. So there was qualifiers in every region. Only one single human qualified. 2 Night Elves, 2 Undeads, 2 Orcs, and then 1 multi-race who mostly plays Orc. If I look at this, I honestly don't see Sog doing well at all. I think it's going to be a struggle for him against any of these players. Whoever else qualifies, he should be a favorite against because he will be the open bracket, but this could be another tournament where the round of 6 has, again, 0 humans, which is just fucking sad because, you know, at the end of the year, it just seems like things are not picking up for the race. This is this year. And this is just like the meta we're stuck in, and there is no patch in sight. Yeah, that was the last patch that ever happened, which was in April last year. And I think that might, honestly, anticipate this is going to be the last patch from Blizzard ever. I highly doubt they will ever patch balance-wise. And then it improved lumber harvesting tech requirements. So now you could research it on tier 1. That was to help with the woods. They changed the one that was on tier 3 to tier 2. Knights have Thundering Blaze by default. That was to help against undeads. Dispel range was slightly increased. All towers repair a little bit faster. I mean, they were so dog shit. And then that was another nerf to clap. The last one. Which is just silly. They increased the gold of scroll speed, but I mean, considering how good of an item he is, I think it should be even higher than this. They slightly nerfed the Serpent Words. Sorry, yeah, they nerfed the Serpent Words because they were like really good when pushing Night Elves. The problem is that, okay, so Orc started doing good against Elf for a very short period of time, and then immediately they got nerfed. And then now Orcs are back to struggling super hard against Elf, which is so stupid. And that acolyte point regeneration 1 black reduced from 4 to 3 HP per second. They reverted back the Rod of Necromancy change. Reduced the price of Ritual Dagger, which I think is stupid. I think Undead Expo is already too strong. They reduced the Impel's stun duration on heroes. I think it was also way too strong. And the damage, I think that needed to be done. I don't know why they did the Boneyard thing with Sacrificial Pits. They changed Frost Armor a little bit. And then for Elf, so this is a very important part. Root of the Claw starting mana increased from 100 to 125. I don't like this. I don't feel like Night Elf was in a spot where they were like the worst race that needed all like these kind of buffs. So the fact that Bear Masters come out with double rejuve now, and Night Elf has access to Staff of Preservation, in my opinion, we haven't even seen like everything that's possible. I think that if top elves start buying more Staff of Preservation consistently, get really good with them, and then just use this, they're just not going to lose any bears. It's going to be so obnoxious. Second taunt removed. I mean, thank God, it was so stupid. They reduced the cooldown. You don't see Mountain Giants that much in solo, I feel like, anymore. Sometimes. But they buffed the Fairy Dragons. That I don't understand because this is mostly used against human. Like, you almost never see this against Orc. Actually, you never see it against Orc. Very rarely would you ever see it against Undead. I guess now they're busy massing Fairy Dragons. So sometimes you'll see one transform. I think this didn't need a buff, in my opinion. This is way too strong now. So it does more damage. And then it just melts your backline, basically, if you're human. If the opponent reaches Fairy Dragons, you're just fucked. And then they buffed the Panda. 1 strength, 1 intel, and then they increased the all levels of Breath of Fire. No, only level 2 and 3. But level 3 from 1080 to 1200 is insane. So basically, if you're human and you're playing against Elf now, looking at all the changes that we saw earlier, you're facing bears, you're facing fairy dragons, you're facing panda, all of which have been buffed. What are you using for yourself? Clap that's been nerfed, slow that's been nerfed, breakers that have been nerfed, like everything has been nerfed. So this is why a lot of games can seem way trickier than they might seem to be, basically. This is why it's harder to understand the full impact. You need to really read all of those patches in a row to understand how we got where we got now. Like, all of these are just insane considering how well Night Elf is doing, in my opinion. Night Elf is still like one of the most flexible races with what they can do because of Moonwells. You know, they have Wellspring. It's easy for them to heal. They can have multiple staffs. They're the only race with human that doesn't have a speed aura, but they don't really need it because most of their units are like decently fast, except maybe for archers. But they have like, you know, ultra vision. And yeah, having staffs is very important. They can have wisps around the map to see. So yeah, I feel like right now, as far as best race, it feels like it's Undead, to be honest. Like you know, you might say, oh well, Happy and 120 are the best, but I don't know. I just think Undead is the best. It seems followed by Night. I think I respect these numbers. I think Night Elf is second best, Orc is third best, and then way behind is like Human. I think this is fairly representative of the current balance in WarCraft 3, is like this current pie chart. And last year, I think it was as well. Night Elf was best performing, Undead second, Orc, and then Human. Now we've only exchanged between Elf and Undead this year. And unfortunately, it seems to me like we're going to be stuck on this patch forever because I don't see Blizzard starting to patch the game. So I think the only chance we have at seeing some changes with the balance, like of course some people are going to say, oh well, we could like change the maps and stuff, and like there's going to be always going to be some changes around the maps that can help certain races. I think it's not enough. I think there has to be actual changes in game as well. I think changing the maps is never going to be enough. It can only do so much. I think there has to be balance changes made eventually. Like if you look at the current world rankings, it's 120 first, Happy second, so 2 Undeads, then Lin, Colorful, Lowlight, Moon, X-Lord, Kaho, Focus, Fly, Foggy. Only in 12th place do you have your first human. That's just wild, I think, for me. And then 53, Hitman, Infi. So in top 15, you only have 2 human, one of which is pretty much retired. That's insanity. Like, the race is just doing so terrible. To me, it's undeniable. The way a patch could work, I think, is if the community decided to start patching themselves. Like the last patch that ever happened on WarCraft 3. Let me find it again. The last patch that ever happened was April 14th, 2021. 1.32.10. That's the last one we just looked at. So now it's been a year and a half. Or close to a year and a half ago. There is literally no sign that there's going to be another patch. I think the way WarCraft 3 gets patched is if the community just bands together and decides that we need to start patching ourselves and then makes it happen. But what will be the exact best way? Because if you talk to WarCraft 3 players, everybody has their own opinion about balance. Like, everybody plays the weakest race clearly. No two players are going to agree about what specific changes need to be adopted. So I think that the best way to do it is to create a secret committee where certain knowledgeable community figures could figure out what changes need to go through. But to do that, they need to first get feedback from pro players. So imagine you go to these rankings, and then you take top 3 of each race, and you get feedback from them about balance. What do they think should be changed? But the way you do it is not like you send them a message and you're like, okay, give me your feedback about what you want changed. No, you tell them, I'm giving you a week or two to think about balance. What do you think should be changed the most? And then a week or two later, you've given them time, you come back, you get their feedback about everything that they think needs to be changed. You collect it. Top 3 of each race. Maybe top 4, maybe top 5. Top 3, I think is probably enough. You make a huge document with everything, which is private, by the way. Like, I don't think nobody needs to know specifically. And then you create this committee with, it's like that will be the hardest part probably, is figuring out who needs to be on that committee. It's very hard, right? I don't think there should be any pro player, there should not be any streamer, there shouldn't be any commentator. So that already discounts a lot of people. No commentators, no streamers, no pro player. So you need to find people that are, ideally are not going to be, or as little biased as possible. I think, for example, one of the good names that I could think of is like Monk, but he works for Frost Giants. But like he used to work for Blizzard, he's knowledgeable about the game, he will be unbiased. These people's job wouldn't be to exactly decide what the changes are going to be. It will be to take all the feedback that was given from pro players, decipher it, and then figure out which one needs to be applied to make the game better. And I think that's the best way to do it, in my opinion. Remo is the best choice. No, I completely disagree. I think Remo should absolutely not be on this. I think there should be, I would say, 3 to 5 people on that committee. And yeah, they should do it secretly. Nobody should know what the changes are up until some changes get announced, and then they finally go through, and then you have the changes going through on W3 Champions. It feels like it's not yet ready, like the community, to do something like that, though. I think it's unlikely that will happen because the last patch was 1.5 years ago, which if you're somebody like me that plays a lot, that feels like that was an eternity ago. And you want to see changes. But if you're a casual, which most people are like casual, they watch and stuff, I don't think they would, like, you need to be way too organized to let somebody like this happen. I think one of the only people that could organize something like this is probably Neo, I would say. But I don't know if he has any desire or intention to try and make something like that happen. But yeah, I think collecting feedback from top pros and then having as unbiased people as possible go through with it and decide what needs to be changed would be the best thing, I think, to happen to the game. And if it's well organized, they wouldn't even have to go through big changes. They could just do like small changes here and there all the time to improve the game consistently and make it better. But it has to be like secretive. I think the feedback from pros needs to be private. And I think the people on the committee that decides what changes go through, it needs to be private as well, because otherwise there will be like too much abuse and blame and whatever. It will not be good for them. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Just my current view on balance and how I think it could be improved and how I think humans in a pretty fucking shitty spot right now. And I hope that changes because it just feels bad. Like currently, I would say Elf is the most playable matchup, but when I play against Undead and Orc, I'm just like, why do I play this game? This is so dumb. It's not enjoyable, and you just start behind from the start of the game. There's nothing fun about it. So let me know what you guys think in chat or like whatever in comments. Everything, like, what do you think? Do you think that's a good idea, what I suggested and stuff, or if you have any question?